Good afternoon, Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the world. Welcome to our webinar today. Very, very excited to have another one with you all. I'm John Bowles from Turn Left Media. We represent LinkedIn marketing solutions exclusively in Sub-Saharan Africa, including South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria. And part of the value that we try and bring to market is to educate all of our customers or prospective customers on new developments that are happening on LinkedIn. And today we've got a good show that's going on. I'm very excited to introduce Jennifer Bunting, who's on the call today, to talk about, the fundamental strategies of video. We're excited about this because, of course, since video rolled out on LinkedIn some time ago, it's definitely kind of the place to be on LinkedIn. It's getting the best engagement, it's getting the best performance, it's getting superb metrics and ultimately results for our clients. So it's very relevant and pertinent to participate in this one. Just a bit of housekeeping. Obviously, please just throw in your questions through the feed, the live feed that we're running right now. We'll collate that into the questions that we can submit at the end of Jennifer's session. And then Marius, my co-founder, will run through those Q&A with Jen at the end of the session. And you'll walk away from this session armed with more knowledge and some more tools to do better marketing on LinkedIn with video. So a little bit about Jennifer Bunting, who's with LinkedIn. She's been with LinkedIn for over 10 years, actually. So she's become part of a veteran of the squad, but she's been in the industry, chatting to her earlier, she's been in advertising one way or another for 20 years, almost starting out on the media buying side. And she said to me, when I got sick of faxing orders back to clients and forth, she got into tech. And now she's the head of product marketing in EMEA and Latin America for LMS, based in London. But she's worked in Sydney, she's based in London, and she's been at Grand Central, Mountain View in San Francisco, LinkedIn's head office. So a lot of experience and a lot of travels from around the world. And she's going to be talking to us obviously about video. I'm going to ask her when she comes on to just give us part of the tradition of LinkedIn is to bring on something about that's not on your LinkedIn profile. So as I hand over to Jen, I hope she's thought about that, but look forward to the session and can't wait to hear about best practice from all the times and hours you've spent on, what was it, 260 odd clips. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get into the real meat of today's presentation with Jennifer Bunting. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, John. Thanks very much. And hello, everyone dialing in. I guess just to answer your question, John, something not on my LinkedIn profile, I think a lot of people are surprised by, given what you were just saying, like I've lived in a lot of countries. I actually didn't get my passport until I was 30 years old. So I grew up in California in Silicon Valley, and my parents' idea of a holiday was a 2-hour drive down the coast. So I never had a reason to get my passport till I actually started working for LinkedIn. And then after a couple of trips, all of a sudden found myself moving to Sydney within under a year of getting my passport. So that's something not on my profile.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll have to drop it in there at some point. Enjoy. Good luck, and we look forward to the session. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, and hello again, everyone. Very excited to share this research with you, and excited to do so with the Turn Left Media team, and to be doing it on LinkedIn Live. So video is, of course, something that's part of many of our daily lives as marketers. I'm going to focus the conversation on video ads today. We still get lots of questions around how do you do great video advertising on LinkedIn? And we set about a very in-depth research project to try and actually answer this question with data. So customers were asking our teams and myself constantly, what does good video look like? And so we wanted to have a data-backed definition for good. And we also wanted to have a data-backed answer to try and understand what it does. So I'll explain the research and why we did it a little more, but I'm going to spend most of the session today really showing you examples of great video and why they were great either for view-through rate or engagement rate, etc., and hopefully have a little bit of fun. I think at this point in lockdown, a lot of us have been watching a lot of webinars, and maybe even through your internal meetings, it can be a bit of death by pie chart or bar graphs and things. So instead of that, I thought I'd keep it as fun as possible, and I'm definitely excited to see the comments in the feed as well and answer your questions as we go. So hopefully you can see my next slide. 1 second. Okay, so a little bit about the methodology for the research. It took a little over 10 months to do. We had over 38,000 pieces of creative that ran in 2018. In 2019, I was able to get access to all that creative, and then I isolated it for the top performing video ads that ran in EMEA. And when I say top performing, there's lots of different ways you can look at top performing. So I'll describe that a little bit, but we really wanted to look at the cream of the crop and the best of the best and start to see, are there differences between them and the bottom performing ones, and what those are, and really have things that are actionable and insightful for you and your teams to create really awesome video advertising that gets results for your business. So by good, of course, when I say what is a good video, video can be used to achieve so many different things in your marketing strategy. And so we didn't want to have a one stock answer, because that would kind of take away from what you may be trying to do and give you direction going down the wrong path. So we defined the top performing video and looked at different categories. We looked at view through rate, engagement rate, completion rate, and CTR, and we looked at the top 260 of these videos. I personally watched all of them and categorized them to try and understand what the top performers were doing. And just to give you an idea of what I was looking at, I wanted to go a step beyond what our databases and what our machine learning could try and tell us, and have an analytical perspective from a human eye. So trying to understand the things that is not being captured behind the scenes. So for example, when someone uploads a video ad, the machines aren't going to tell us what type of content is it. But as marketers, we know we're trying to do a product demo, or we're doing thought leadership, or perhaps it's more of a promotional short clip that you're trying to get across to just increase your awareness. So lots of different types of video content. I had a spreadsheet that listed them all. We looked at whether audio was used or not, and if it was, in either case, did it have subtitles? How was other types of text involved on the screen or not? Did it have animation or motion graphics? And also, what was in it frame by frame? Were they close-ups of people? Were they distant shots, groups of people? We looked at the surrounding environment. So were there lots of like panoramic vista type shots, or shots inside of offices, product shots? The list just kind of exploded and kept going on and on. So it took quite a long time to look at it all, but I think we have some really interesting insights that I'm going to share with you. And I also want to call, of course, creative is one of many elements that goes into a really great video ad, and whether or not you see the results of your efforts and your return on investment. Of course, your targeting, your context, these all play a really important role. But for this study, we looked exclusively at the video creative itself. And part of that reason is because we were getting questions around that we wanted to answer from fellow marketers. But we also know from research done by the likes of Nielsen that if you can nail your video creative, this is going to have some of the biggest contribution to the sales and your ROI at the end of the day. So we really wanted to focus on that. Of course, my colleagues at LinkedIn, we could probably do whole separate webinars on things like targeting and reach as well, but we'll just focus on the creative today. And another thing to kind of call out why we did this, we really wanted to also have a specific look at B2B versus B2C. So when we launched video ads a few years ago from a paid perspective on LinkedIn, there's already tons of amazing content out there by other research bodies, marketers, agencies, lots of great research on video. But we saw a gap that we wanted to try and answer, and that was, should B2B be doing anything differently? And of course, B2C has awesome examples, very creative tactics that B2B marketers could also be using and testing. But the journey and the purchase process is different from B2B, and that really does influence the type of video content that you create. And just as a really quick analogy, because I always love a good snack, I thought I would kind of liken it to if you're going to buy some crisps or chips, as I say, being American, if you're going to pop down to a corner shop and pick up a snack later today, your decision is hopefully a very simple one. You can choose between Doritos or Pringles, or maybe it's something else that you prefer, but you're not going to have to invest a lot of money or capital into this, and hopefully not a lot of time figuring out which is the right snack for you. But by contrast, for us as marketers, for example, if we want to invest in another platform, maybe a CRM platform, there's going to be a lot of time and effort, and also the whole psychology behind making that purchase decision for your company. So for example, it's going to cost a lot more. You may have to ask for budget from your manager. At smaller companies, you may have to go all the way up to your CFO to make a big budget request. And in those cases, you better have a business plan prepared and know why you're wanting to make that investment in one partner versus another. You may have to think about safety, security, compliance, all of these things. And that's before you get your team to start using a program for your business, training them and making sure that the investment was worthwhile. And so while we can get really creative and borrow from B2C tactics, we do have a very unique path to purchase that B2B marketers need to think of. And this influences the type of content we should be creating. With all of that as context, I'm going to just go ahead and get into some of the findings. As I said, hopefully this can be kind of fun and interesting to see some examples of great videos as well. I've really thought about just showing you some of the questions I get asked and then how I use the research to help answer those questions. So starting kind of at the top of the funnel, a lot of customers are really trying to get reach, get eyeballs on your video creative. So how can you really stand out in a B2B context, whether it's on LinkedIn or quite frankly, anywhere else? Our team is starting to employ these tactics for all the video creative that we look to do. So I thought I would show you an example here by contrast. So a lot of best practices that are out there when they're talking about the funnel, the journey, and trying to get someone upper funnel, they often say, make your video shorter, very short videos, sometimes 3 seconds, sometimes 6 seconds. And that really is very limiting from a storyteller's perspective. And you really also end up with a lot of GIFs on the internet. Now, I personally have a strong affinity towards GIFs. I can't even send a text message anymore without using some of my favorite GIFs. But as a marketer, I most likely will not be putting paid strategy behind promoting a GIF. It's great for organic and in other ways, but for paid, probably not. And the reason for that, after looking at the data and these examples and the top performing, and also I watched around 60 of the bottom performing videos, I would say that GIFs are very often, and there's a few examples that have proven me wrong because it might be a controversial opinion, but GIFs are very often little more than a blinking billboard equivalent on the internet. So as you can see in this example we mocked here on the right of an animated GIF, for example, it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't give you a reason to click. It doesn't give you a reason to buy. It doesn't build your relationship with the brand at all. Whereas if you think about, you need to keep your videos shorter in terms of if you're just beginning a relationship with an audience and trying to get their awareness. If you're trying to keep your videos short, really think about the micro story angle that you can do. And I think it's important to think about micro stories and telling, how can you tell a story briefly from the very beginning of your creative process? Because a lot of times, especially for people on the agency side, you get given a brief or you get given your 30-second TV spot, and then all of a sudden you have to cut it down, and it might not make sense when it's a really short 6 or 7 seconds, excuse me. So I love this example by Bayer Pharmaceuticals. This was one of the top performers in all of EMEA 2018, both not just from view-through rate, but also it was in the top performers again and again in things like engagement rate and click-through rate. So Bayer did some really smart things in trying to tell a micro story. They knew that audiences on LinkedIn like data, professionals like data to prove their points, and they do have some great stats, but they've used the copy around that space. That way, every second of this video becomes precious in order to get someone's attention. They also were not afraid of making a bit of an emotional appeal, even though showing this ad on a professional network. And so they really kind of show you the story around visual impairment, what they can do to help combat that. And they do so by showcasing an example. And what if a grandparent can't see his granddaughter? So it's quite emotional. They have a very limited text on the screen. It's all about telling the story through the actors and very quickly. So they had great results with this particular ad. So something to think about. Moving into more of an engagement type of context, how do you create engagement in B2B? How do you drive conversation? And sometimes video gets ignored with this because I'm not really sure why it gets ignored, actually, because the data should prove otherwise. On LinkedIn, we see that video ads drive 30% more comments per ad impression than a non-video ad. So imagine a static image ad. If you are really concerned about engagement rate, think about having video in the mix with that, because you will see higher engagement rates. So with that, let's think about what are some examples and some ways you can try and drive conversation by using a video. I love this example by SITA. It is so simple and it makes it brilliant. So SITA was trying to get some research across, and they were talking about baggage handling and baggage tracking, which can be quite a dry topic if you were to word it that way, but they didn't. So they told a quick story about what if your luggage gets lost, and they wanted to get you to come and see their findings at an event back when we could go to events. So they did some great things here. First off, they focused on the speaker. So they did a close-up. It's a single shot of the speaker. And that is really the bulk of what you see on the screen. So when you have a close-up of a person, this can really help inspire conversation. The ad was just over 30 seconds long. So she asked questions. She got to the point. They captioned it so you could see what she was talking about. But the bottom line here is, for this thought leadership piece, they really wanted to drive conversation. And so they focused on people, because people talk to other people. Another thing that I like about that particular ad is that you could shoot this at home. You could do this on a mobile device. You can really think about how do you balance your budget between your creative and your production and your promotion in this way. So great example there. I want to show you an example that is the exact opposite as well. Here is an example from Google. This is a case study. B2B marketers, we all love case studies. And the reason is because they make your potential buyer see themselves in someone who has already bought from you. So this is a great example in a case study about Android. Again, a little bit more complexity in the frame-by-frame storytelling going on here. But it's, as you can see, because of that, it's quite different. But it's a slice of life, and it inspires conversation because someone who's watching it can start to see how Android would fit into their life as well. So it starts off by showing getting up in the morning, the commute, getting into the office, and how Android is with you through each step of the way. So a great way of getting those conversations going by showing people like you. And a last one, as a product marketer, I could not show some examples of product marketing videos that we've seen run on the platform. And this is a great example by Booking.com for Business. Their campaign was actually about travel compliancy. Again, can be potentially a dry topic. And also for business travelers, it's not as fun to book a business trip sometimes as a personal trip, especially if you have to use different systems and tools and follow different rules. So they really wanted to focus on how they solve the pain points. And that is what they were able to do with this video, and it drove tons and tons of engagement. One of our top 10 in terms of engagement on the platform during the period. A few things they did well. Again, all these examples are really different. So I hope this shows you can have fun and creativity as long as you're, giving people reason to talk and engage with you. They used animation in this case, colors that were very easy to look at, very pleasing, but really simplifying the process. They did have some shots in here, kind of dual screen, showing their product itself, but really showing how they can make things easy. And they did so by using animation to help make things simplified. So clicks. Clicks is another question we get a lot about, how you get people to click on your ad. So I would say one thing about that, clicks I have a love-hate relationship with because they can potentially commoditize the marketing function. So some marketers don't want to talk about click-through rate all the time. So it's very understandable. On the flip side, though, especially if you don't have the data on your back end to showcase what your marketing campaigns did to increase ROI for your business, driving clicks is one step closer that you can get to help measuring that. And also, if you're trying to drive something like leads, you need to drive more traffic to your website or your landing page. So clicks do become really important. So let me show you some examples of videos that had really high click-through rates. So the first one is a bit of, and these kind of have a theme, but of mystery and teasing your audience. So here's another product demo. And for any of you who work in the technology space or you have a physical product, out of all of the top performing and bottom performing videos I watched, this is the only video that was an unboxing video. And if you are on Instagram often, or maybe you love following fashion brands, there's a lot of unboxing videos in the B2C space. So I think it's a call to action for many of us to rethink how creative we can be with the stories we tell. So this is a product demo video, but she's unboxing. It creates a sense of mystery. So the person who's doing the presenting on here, the whole idea of unboxing is quite exciting. It reminds us of birthdays and times we get where there's this bit of a surprise. So you get to see what is in the box, and then she tells you all the reasons why it helps for your business as well. And also, even though they don't in this particular example have the captioning, which is a best practice, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. They do have some pop-up, some copy and motion graphics going on in the video, so you can understand what is happening and get the gist without having to turn on your audio. The next example here is by SolidWorks, which is part of the SO Systems. And in this case, they really wanted to drive leads. They had an ebook and they wanted to get software engineers to download, to download this ebook. So they used video to entice this action. And so there's a lot going on frame by frame. Now, it doesn't move too quickly and make you get dizzy. There were some videos that went too quickly. They stay just long enough on each frame. There's constant motion. There's this momentum that's building towards a big idea. So the whole idea here is they want to cause you to innovate and surprise yourself in the type of things you can create. So by downloading this ebook, it promises that. And the video kind of helps do that, but without really giving away too much. So you can still find out more when you click and download. And that is also something else which I think the next video demonstrates as well, which is you need to give people a reason to click as well. Don't give away your whole story. And you can create mystery to try and want them to click through and learn more about you. I will mispronounce. I don't speak German. I don't want to mispronounce their name or offend anyone with my poor language skills. This particular bank, though, had a really great story around the future of work. And they created a sense of mystery. There's simple things that you can do with your next video shoot. So for example, it started off with a darker background and lightened up. That kind of is reminiscent of the curtains parting at a live performance, if you will. So that kind of revealing and creating mystery. You're seeing something behind the curtain. Also, the gentlemen in this shot, they're sitting in an unusual environment. The setting behind them. Why are they sitting on these type of unusual chairs? That can really cause you to pause as you're scrolling through the news feed and see what is going on. And of course, they did also have the subtitles or the captioning here, which is huge. Now this ad is in German, it is in English. So I wasn't watching these videos and grading the quality of the content. I was trying to understand what was going on visually so that I could give recommendations to other marketers. But honestly, if you have a good story, that really, really helps a lot too. And so even though I wasn't really watching for that, I found myself reading along and watching this video because what they were captioning was really interesting. So that is a good one as well. I see lots of questions coming in. I'm thinking I will take them as we get towards the end, just to make sure I give you guys a few more examples. But please keep the questions coming because they're my favorite part of sharing this research with anyone. So I mentioned a little bit about silence, and I think one statistic that might be helpful, a lot of people don't know, is that most videos are actually watched with the sound off on LinkedIn, 79%, and that number is even higher on other social platforms. And that's really looking at the news feed. You're probably not watching this live stream on silent at home or wherever you may be today, but when you're scrolling through the news feed, it often is. Even if you're at home, you may not want to be disturbing the person next to you, or it could be you're on a commute. Lots of reasons why you may be watching videos on silent. But that kind of brings up an important question, because marketers spend a lot of time thinking about the music we put behind our video ads and what is being said. So how can you get your message across when no one is listening? They're watching, but they're not listening. So there are several examples, but I want to highlight some of the top performing. These were great click-through rate and engagement rate ads, and they were quite brilliant in terms of how they leveraged silence. This example here from Acciona, an investment bank out of Spain. In this particular ad, they wanted to showcase how they can help investors make decisions to invest that are not only good for their bottom line, but also good for the environment. And in order to tell that story, they showed visually what happens when you make decisions that are good for you, but bad for the environment. And they show quite a bit of the devastation that this can cause. There was no voiceover, there was no one talking, or there was no voice of God narrator to explain what was happening in any of these shots. Instead, it was shot with these powerful visuals with a song called Mad World. So quite a famous song, and they captioned the songs as if it was the dialogue of the ad. So it's really great because songs are written to have powerful lyrics, and so they used this fully to their advantage. You can get the point across of why this song was used in conjunction with these visuals without ever turning your audio on. But of course, it makes it even more powerful if it does inspire you to turn it on. You can get a bit of goosebumps watching this ad with the audio, but you get the point across beautifully even watching it on silence. So I love this example, and it performed really well. Also think about your actors and the talent you have on the screen. This ad by Essity is a personal paper products company. They did this ad in multiple languages, which is another reason to think about silence, because there's less you have to translate. This particular ad, they wanted to showcase the importance of having tough conversations with your kids or your daughters. So they used the actors here and didn't even have a script. They had a lot of close-ups of parents looking at each other, making eye contact, physical movements on the screen. They used the copy around the ad in order to give more context, and the only words that were on the screen, I think it said time for conversations. And they were able to, I saw this ad show up again and again in multiple languages: German, French, Spanish, Portuguese. This is the English version, but very powerful way to kind of in a meta way talk about having conversations without actually saying a word. And it was a top performer as well. And I, of course, have to talk about completion rates. It's, I believe, a bit of a red herring. Everyone wants to know about completion rates and how can they have great completion rates. And I actually spent a huge amount of time trying to crack this nut and explain how you can increase your completion rates on LinkedIn. But it is a bit of a red herring. So just to make sure you guys know a little bit about the analysis into this, of course, the shorter your video, the higher your completion rate is. So the very, very highest completion rates are videos that are 3 seconds or under in some cases. But like 3 seconds, of course, you're going to have a great completion rate because it doesn't take a lot of time investment for your audience. And so the longer your video gets, the lower your completion rate is. That's just a very normal mathematical equation you can think about. If you're getting the action you want from someone, it doesn't actually matter. So we did isolate in completion rate and tried to look at videos through different lengths of time because we wanted to see if there were different techniques you wanted to employ. And we saw videos that were almost close to 10 minutes in some cases. I think, though, what I learned is that this is, as I said, a red herring. So the videos that had the highest completion rate in our analysis had the bottom performing when it came to click-through rate or engagement rate, for example. So if you are my point would be is completion rate is important. It helps you understand if your content is sticky, and it's great for retargeting. You can retarget by how long someone has watched your ad, but it shouldn't be your silver bullet. It works best if you're pairing it with other metrics that are going to be meaningful for your business. So for example, if someone only watches an ad for 5 seconds, but they click and make a purchase, or they give you their lead collection information, did it matter if they watched your whole video or not? Because you succeeded in less time than you thought you were going to take to win that race. So just something to think about. There are exceptions to these rules. So for example, we've had clients who don't want to drive clicks to a landing page at all, and they really do are only measuring their success on completion rate. But that's very unusual, I think, to not have a landing page or not have an action you want someone to take after watching your ad. So unfortunately, I didn't find an example of the top creme of the creme completion rates to show you. So instead, what I did was I wanted to see above benchmark completion rate and above benchmark click-through rate. And here's 2 examples I did find in that realm. This one's by Perkbox. They provide benefits to companies to offer their employees. And this example is super cool. It's very short. It feels very organic. I love that they shot it and portrayed it with the black on either side of the screen. And also it's very celebratory. It's kind of teasing the audience a bit with some of the best practices we saw before. Why is this guy so happy? Why is everyone high-fiving? How can you get a beer cart in your office too? So they did a really great job of teasing the audience and got a high completion rate and a high click-through rate. Another example, a bit of a product video. If you have the right message and you're targeting the right audience, you may not need a lot of time to get your message across. So Abu Dhabi Global Markets was targeting lawyers in Abu Dhabi, and they had a app that they wanted to offer. So by targeting the right people and really focusing on the benefit of using the app and a quick screenshot, they were able to drive a lot of clicks and a lot of completion rate for their videos as well. And before we start going into questions, I do want to talk about the biggest pitfalls to avoid. So whenever I join webinars and I'm trying to learn best practices, I also have in the back of my mind, can you help me just avoid some potential failures? So here are 3 things. I don't want to shame anyone, but here are 3 things I did see again and again in bottom performers that you may want to avoid with your video creative. The first one is don't be homogenous with an opener. There were some really beautiful examples of great content that was done news style, for example. But because they wanted it to feel like it was part of a series, they had a really long intro that lasted like 5 seconds. I actually thought there was a problem with my data in some cases, and that I was seeing the same ad over and over. And it wasn't until I continued watching it just to make sure that I realized it was actually like a 60-second ad, but they had a 5-second opener that was a series, and so it was the same. So having a series type of content is brilliant, but my recommendation is to get to the point as quickly as possible. Have a title come up, have something come up that shows you why this episode is different, especially if you're retargeting, because people may think that they've already seen your content before. So don't waste those first few seconds with a homogeneous opener that can distract your audience or make them skip. The next one is text on screen. So I think people have a higher tolerance when they're reading captioning. They know they have to keep up with the speaker because they are making that conscious decision not to turn their audio on. But when it comes to text on screen, you don't want it to be too heavy and be too much of a pop-up. I saw some really unfortunate performance for customers that basically were doing nothing more than a PowerPoint slide, and it was bullet after bullet, or ads that had loads of copy. You really want to think about keeping your sentences short, no more than like 4 to 7 words in a sentence, and make sure these words are on screen long enough for someone to digest it. So that means really being a very good editor when you have copy on the screen, and make sure it's as brief as possible. So really think like a reporter and edit your copy down, and don't over rely on it. You've got these gorgeous images. We've seen several examples where you don't even need the copy to tell the story. So if you can do both, few words and tell your story visually, that is awesome. And then bringing it home, micro versus meaningless gifts can tend towards not providing you enough information to make a purchase decision. So think about the micro stories you can tell within a short period of time. And then just to close out, here were if you want to take a screenshot, here are the 5 tips that you can take back to your team. Of course, some of these I've been told by my peers make more sense if you've seen the whole presentation, so feel free to share. But I would say make sure you are focusing on micro stories rather than GIFs. Surprise your audience and give them a reason to click through. Don't give away the whole story at the very beginning of your ad. Give them a reason to click. Also, when you're trying to drive engagement, remember that people like seeing other people. Close-ups, at least for a few seconds, can be really powerful at trying to drive conversation. Making sure you're thinking about how your your audio is used or not used to get your story across. And then think about how you use completion rate. Completion rate does have a purpose, but think about how it marries with the other metrics that you're looking at to measure your success. And that's really it. I'm excited to dive into the questions.
Jane, thank you. You have been absolutely amazing. And it's incredible to think that you've spent your time watching 38,000 videos. That is, we had somebody mention a lady called Kerry. She said it must have been a beast of a spreadsheet. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
So well done on that. Diving into the questions, the first one is from Marika, and the question is, what are your thoughts about reusing a video that works a few times on your LinkedIn page?
So what is reusing a video that works a few times? Yeah, I mean, you can always reuse your video content. So without knowing the specific example from that one from America, I think if you've run the campaign before, and you still have people you want to reach, you still want to get your message across, you can. Sometimes when I've been asked that question, people meant they wanted to reuse video from television ads. And actually, we see lots of that. There are lots of, you spend your money as a marketer, you got the budget to get that content created, you want to use it as much as you possibly can. So definitely, if you can get all the gas and share it on LinkedIn and get the reactions you want, then that's fine too. I think these tips can be powerful when you're working on creating that content, so you remember what you're going to need, because you will probably need to edit it down. 30 seconds it's a great length of time. It works well on LinkedIn, but you may want to test it much shorter. And so you want to have these principles in the back of your mind so that when you get that longer piece of content, you can edit it. But yeah, definitely test it out and reuse pieces of content, because someone might have missed it.
So to add to that, I mean, there's a couple of other social platforms who keep talking about reducing your video length and just going shorter and shorter. And a couple of years ago, it was try and get your video under 7 seconds. Now it's try and get your video under 3 seconds. I mean, I don't know what people can really understand. What do you think is what have you seen as a good length for LinkedIn for B2B?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because your length of time, they're giving you recommendations based on what they see works on their platform. And so if you're running an ad in between other video content, it needs to be short because people will skip it. On LinkedIn, the ads run in the newsfeed. And so people are on LinkedIn to learn something, to grow their network. They're here with a purpose in mind. And so we find that if your content is good and it's helping them achieve their goals, they're going to have the attention to stick with you longer. So it depends on your goal. If your goal is strictly completion rate, then I would say under 15 seconds. But if your goal is driving clicks, you can go 30, 40, definitely under a minute for an ad. But I would say you can even go up to, there were ads in the top performers that were 45, 50 seconds. But they might have clicked. They might not have finished the ad. They might have gone through and added themselves. But I would say between 15 and 30 seconds on average.
Okay. Then our next one is from Oko, and I had a great conversation with her this week, and I managed to get her to come and join us on the webinar, which was fantastic. So Oko, thanks for joining. Her first question, because she's given us two, is can impactful copy be enough to create curiosity about a video and encourage a click through? So how important is the copy to the video?
Yeah, the copy is important to the video. So of course, I don't know if people clicked on the copy or if they clicked on they probably clicked on the call to action button. So I think they help each other. And I think the bear example was a great one because the video itself for buyer really, I think it was like, what if you can't see your grandchildren? But then the copy around the ad was about statistics and how big of an issue this is and what bear can do to help. So the ad gave you the context and the emotional appeal, and then they used the copy around it to give you the reason to click. And they had phenomenal click-through rate. So I don't know that there's a perfect science, but I think or that it works alone. I think they work together. And how do you make them complement each other so that your video can focus on the visuals and less on the copy?
Okay, beautiful. So then the follow-up question to that from Pumi is then sort of what is the ideal length for supporting copy?
Yeah, ideal length for the supporting copy. So I'm interpreting this question, by the way, guys, is the copy that's like around the ad unit, not in the video itself. I always try, I can't remember my character count off the top of my head, but I would try to keep it below the click for more. So once you get the 3 dots, the ellipses, I love short, powerful, punchy copy. Like all my favorite writers, their sentences are very short. It creates a lot of momentum. So the shorter your copy, and so you don't have to click to read more. You want to save that click to drive into your landing page, or going in and engaging with your ad. So I try to keep it shorter than what it gets truncated.
So that's like 140, 150 characters or less.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know, like I've seen some of the restrictions now go to about 60 characters. So if you could really keep it short and punchy.
Yeah, and I mean, for my copy, when I personally write it, I don't include my hashtags in that. So, like that's just trying to gain more virality. So if those are hidden, as long as they're pulling it up in other people's searches, they're serving their purpose. I don't need them to read the hashtag. So that copy, yeah, I mean, under 60 characters is great, but sometimes it's really hard, especially in B2B.
Absolutely. So again from Oko, are subtitles the new video accessory?
Can I steal that? I love that. I think they're more important than a handbag. They're so important because, like we said, 79% of your audience is watching your video, but they're not listening to it. And so if you have a speaker, they'll read along. So you do definitely need your subtitles. I love that.
That's a good. It's a great analogy. I think she saw the handbag behind your head, which is where maybe inspired her a little bit as well.
Trying to get creative with my home studio.
I love it. I love it. So this is from a gentleman you should know, Mr. Rylan Holy. Hopefully he's getting some action out of this as well. So how does video length affect where it is used in the funnel? So for example, longer videos better further down in the marketing funnel. Where does it fit? Does it fit?
Yeah, so it's a question that we think a lot about on our content team as well. Something this research spurt is talking about, and we debated it a lot actually when we were trying to think about what we were going to analyze for. The shorter your video, the earlier it typically works in your process. So if you think about brands that are unknown, or maybe you're a well-known brand and they don't know much about what you offer, they don't care about you yet. They don't follow. Remember, these are creatives that these aren't to followers. You're paying to basically interrupt someone's time on LinkedIn, and yet they had these absolutely fabulous results. So I think if your video is shorter in the beginning, it's being mindful of the time. They just don't know about you yet to invest that time. It's a bit like speed dating. So it's like a first few seconds really short, and then the dates get longer as you go. So as you start moving someone through that decision to purchase from you, you can spend a lot more time with them. And that's where product demos later on, they want to see how the product is can be used or how it can solve their problem, because they're at that stage now. They know the benefit you provide, why you're unique, and they're maybe okay with your cost point, but they're just trying to learn how complicated you are to use. Totally, this could be different for depending on whatever your product is. But yeah, the shorter the video, higher in the funnel, longer the video, like use it for account-based marketing, upselling, that final close.
Fantastic. So the next one, and this is a question from Kenya. So Wanjira, thank you for joining us as well. You know, not everybody has got those big, massive TVC budgets that marketers always love to get in the balance sheet. So her question is, would you recommend image slideshow videos for clients, and is the impact performance the same as high quality videos? What do the normal people use when we can't hire those film crews?
I mean, it's even, you know what is really funny? The more marketers I talk to, no one ever has enough money. No one ever has enough time. And we're all cutting corners somewhere. And even brands that you think would have the biggest budgets often don't. I think you need to find ways to make it look good. So yes, you can use still images, but there's tricks you can do. So for example, you can zoom in or zoom out so it looks like it's moving. Don't make it look like a slideshow from your like your parents or grandparents did in the 90s. Like, have some movement behind it. Have some, if you've got a still image, have some copy pop up, zoom in, zoom out. Also, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't, as a marketer, I don't want to rely on stock images and stock videos and stock music. But the reality is, we don't have budget to do. I can't. Every blog post we do, we can't create a video for it. So I do rely on stock photography and stock videos. It's just making sure your copy surrounding it, like pick it with purpose. It's really like even my slide, I had red herring and then I had a balance. Like, why did I do that? It doesn't make sense. I should have had a fish. So like, make sure it's got a reason behind the images. People will be a little more forgiving. And also, if it's going to be all stock and all still, keep it really short, because people will know that it's not unique content. So especially if you're using still photos, keep it really short and get to the point quicker, and then save that budget if you can film something and have the nicer editing and save those longer videos for that.
So a question for me is, we always get to see these amazing B2C videos of Ferraris and Nikes and all these gorgeous things. Like, what's the one secret that the B2B guys can steal from these amazing B2C brands?
It's so many. That's a good question. I wish I thought about it a little bit more. I think it's all those videos, those ads are hitting on something. Like when you're selling a big ticket item, whether it's travel or a luxury car, you're selling the version of you, right? That you want to be. So your life will be so cool if you buy this car. I think there's more that B2B marketers can do. Like, your business will thrive if you do this, or you will have this kind of success. I think when you get that, what's in it for you as the buyer, and because not every company is a small company, the small company wants to be the next famous entrepreneur. But if you're at a big enterprise, you may have the wallet and the budget to invest in another solution for your business. So what's in it for you? Is it going to save you time so you can get home to your kids? Or like, there's more of a personal play that I think a lot of B2B marketers sometimes forget to do. And I think that's what's inspiring the most about some of the, the bigger budget, cool B2C ads.
Great. So from Evelyn, what is the benchmark for a great video or micro video besides the completion rate?
So it depends on what you want the video to do. So if you are ultimately trying to drive clicks, then that is the benchmark you need to go for. You need to have a high click-through rate. If you're trying to win hearts and minds, then you need engagement rate, and you need the conversation, you need people sharing and being in favor and wanting to follow you. If you're just trying to drive awareness, we looked at view-through rate. I didn't want to look at pure reach, because you can buy yourself into top performance. So we looked at view through rate to even things out. So if you're just trying to drive awareness, then like are you getting enough views so that people know about you? And are you, we talked about, reusing the same content. Like, are you getting enough frequency? They've seen you once and now they need to see you again and again so that they remember you have a solution. So there isn't really a silver bullet. It just depends on what you're using video for in your campaign.
Okay, lovely. And then from Nao, for a new brand, how often would you suggest they use videos to advertise on LinkedIn?
How often? I'm not 100% sure how to answer that question. It depends on if you have good video content. So, I mean, we know that video performs really well, and in terms of like getting people to spend more time, it's sticky, it creates conversation. So we try to use it from a paid perspective and an organic perspective for even our own campaigns, but we're still going to use other forms of creative. LinkedIn, for example, has carousel ads, has single image ads. We also have different products within the messaging environment on LinkedIn. So I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket. I would try and reach people everywhere they're going to be, because you never know what's going to resonate with someone at that particular moment in time. So I try to use it whenever I can, whenever I have the creative, but there are just some campaigns we don't have time. We're moving really fast and we didn't have the budget for video creative. So I would say as often as it makes sense for your brand, and then measure your results and see what works best over time.
Amazing. So my last question is there a brand that's out there in the market right now that you've seen that is doing a phenomenal job? Somebody that we can all look to and feel inspired by?
There are a lot of them out there. So let's see. I think Oceania's creative. I showed one of the ads that they did there about the environment. I find that ad very inspiring. It makes you think about the environment and what you can do even if you're not banking with them. Who else? So that's a good one from like a B2C financial services example there. There's so many of the ones that we saw today. I hate giving all the kudos to the bigger companies because they're so well known. There's a lot of education companies, different IE business schools doing some really interesting things right now as well. And then also like live video you're doing a live video session today, Mariah. So I think following you guys is great. There's also some cool companies just experimenting more. There's a brand called Emirates in DB, and they have a whole like LinkedIn live kind of scheduled programs, if you will, and live on other platforms too, and how they use it differently between different platforms, just based on who's the audience, who's tuning in, and what do they want. They have that very good, they understand their audience and what they're going to want. So there's lots of examples, hopefully, but I think all the ones that we shared today are really good ones to definitely be following on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. So the last question, and we'll leave it to Evelyn, because I know she is she works for a very competitive business and they love looking at these things. So what were the most video views you have seen on LinkedIn? It's quite a big question. What's been the biggest, most successful video you have seen?
That's a big question. Because I would want to talk to the marketers, to be honest, and understand like what did it do for their business. So with this research, I'm really looking at the performance analytics of the individual creative pieces. One thing I wish I'd had, if I had unlimited time and budget, I would also like to do a follow-up research piece to this and understand how these ads fit into the overall creative strategy, because we're really looking at just one snapshot of a whole campaign. And so I that's a hard question to ask, because what is interesting me next about video is how is it used together with live video broadcasts, with other video ad formats, but also how does it uplift everything else you're doing? It could be even with out of home, and how does it all go together strategically? So I think I want to think about that question more, and maybe write a blog post about who the best of the best is.
Okay, perfect. Well, Evelyn, when Jen writes this blog post, she must credit you. She'll tag you in, and then you'll know the answer. Jen, I think that's it from our side. We're so incredibly fortunate to have you on for the session today. Thank you so much. It has been truly insightful. To everybody who's tuned in, thank you for taking your time. Thank you for the great questions that everybody shared as well. Really humbled. We're looking forward to Jen's next research piece when she gets the budget. To see, and hopefully everybody from today, you can go out there and you can make some truly amazing video that can be included in the next research piece. If there's any comments, any additional questions that we can share after this, or any conversations you want to have, please let us know. If you want to figure out what the next topic should be, what we need to talk about, then leave them in the comments so we can start addressing them. All our participants who's tuned in, thank you so much. Jen, thank you very much. You have been incredible.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for dialing in, everyone.
Have a good afternoon.